Jed McCaleb, the co-founder of Ripple XRP and Stellar Lumens XLM. Yes, this guy co-founded XRP and XLM, and he just dropped a huge warning on the future of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Yes, in this video right here, Jed McCaleb speaks to this guy from the Bitcoin historian about the future of cryptocurrency and the future of Bitcoin and altcoins. And this video is extremely important, especially if you hold XLM or XRP, because this guy quite literally created those cryptocurrencies with David Schwartz, with Arthur Brito, and then he went on to go and make his own cryptocurrency called Stellar Lumens XLM. Yes, Jed McCaleb created the XRP cryptocurrency and the XLM crypto, and in this brand new interview with the Bitcoin historian, he speaks about the future of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. He speaks about whether or not Bitcoin will be the future of global national currencies, if it will replace currencies around the world or not, and what will happen to cryptocurrencies, and also his mistakes that he made on with Bitcoin in the early days. It's because he gave away tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin, which would now be worth billions and billions of dollars. So even he made huge mistakes in crypto, and in this interview right here with a Bitcoin historian, he speaks about all of that. So this video is extremely important, especially if you hold XRP or XLM or Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency. Actually, you'd want to watch this video because this is really, really interesting. This is around a 30-minute interview, but what's really interesting is that on YouTube, it only has 300 views. That's it. 300 views from the Bitcoin historian from an interview that was posted about a week ago, and only 22 likes. But after watching this interview, yes, I watched the whole thing and I was like, wow, I really need to make a video about this because not many people have seen this interview. And this is really, really interesting, especially if you hold XLM, XRP, Bitcoin, or any cryptocurrency. You want to watch this because Jed McCaleb is one of the pioneers in cryptocurrency from the early days. He is one of the earliest Bitcoin investors in the entire world. He co-authored, co-created, co-founded XRP and XLM. So when he speaks, you need to listen. So in today's video, I'm going to play for you this entire interview from the beginning to the end. It's going to be a long video, I know, but this is really, really interesting. So sit back, relax, get yourself some popcorn, some snacks, whatever you need to do. Destroy the like button, share this video, join and subscribe, and enjoy.
There's no way I should have given Mt. Gox to Mark Carlos, right? But it was like hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin or something he was selling for like basically nothing. I was like, dude, just give it a second. I felt so bad for him afterwards. He would have made like billions of dollars. Put Bitcoin on there, and it's just, it's worth like a few cents. So it's not, no one is really taking it that seriously. But then a year later, now it's worth like $10,000 or something. Obviously, it's a huge mistake.
So Jed McCaleb, just for some context, he created the Mt. Gox exchange. Yes, the Mt. Gox exchange that got hacked in 2010, 2011. He created that exchange and he gave it away to someone for free. Literally, it held tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin. And that exchange would be one of the biggest exchanges in the world today if he didn't just give it away to someone. And that person basically blew it up. That person messed everything up. And that's one of his biggest mistakes. But just for some context about what he's speaking about. So again, let's continue. This is really important.
I think it would have been worth it.
Hey everybody, it's the Bitcoin historian here. P. Rizzo, special treat today. We've got somebody who is one of the true OGs. If you think I'm an OG of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, Jed McCaleb, founder of Vast, co-founder of Stellar and Ripple. This person, Jed, right here, is a real OG, true OG, class 2010, 2009. Jed has been here since the very beginning, helping move this space forward. Now, looking to take humanity into the reaches of space and helping ensure our place amongst the stars. Jed, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, happy to talk to you.
Well, Jed, you've been with this industry, with this technology for all the iterative steps, all the developments. Is Bitcoin winning right now on the global stage?
Winning. I mean, it definitely has a place that's secured. I mean, definitely more than when it started, obviously, right? I don't think it's probably not going to become the global currency. I think it just doesn't really have the number of transactions you need for that, but I don't see it going away anytime in the near future for sure. Like it's
And that's part of the reason why he created his own cryptocurrency, Xrp and Xlm, is because he wanted to create a worldwide currency that everyone can use, and he believes that Bitcoin is a little bit too slow for that. So that's also some more context. But shout out to the Bitcoin historian for this interview. This is my first time seeing his channel, so make sure you subscribe to them, follow them, whatever. But they did a really good job in this interview. So
it seems like it's part of like more and more like the traditional financial industry, right? So it's exciting to see as someone who's like saw it from the very beginning. So yeah.
Yeah, I asked that because it's an abstract question, right? I think, you were somebody who, coming to the technology early, you wanted Bitcoin to succeed. You had your own definitions of that. Maybe you can tell people a little bit about, your first encounter and like what you thought you would have wanted from the technology
Right.
at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess actually framed that way, I think it actually hasn't made as big of a dent as I was hoping. But I mean, although the price has gone up a lot, like it's, I think the original hope for me and a lot of others was that it would kind of more decentralize the way money flows around the planet and kind of liberate people from like being beholden to banks and things like this. And it's done that to some extent, but not anywhere near as much as I think that we hoped. And yeah, but I mean, I think that's obviously like a long way to go still. I think maybe it's still on the horizon somewhere, but it's not there yet for that.
Well, there's a lot of people, newer listeners who now they have this romantic view of the early days, right? They almost like wish, the classic trope on X now is like you had a time machine, you can go back in 2010, they would do it and they would buy all the Bitcoin. You were there. So how do you look at that time machine question? Do you wish you could go back to 2010 and be back in Bitcoin again?
Well, I mean, it would have been...
I wish I could go back to 2010 because I remember the first time I ever saw Bitcoin was, I believe, in 2011, 2012. Bitcoin was trading at around $100, and I saw people speaking about it on Facebook. Yes, Facebook and MySpace. Yeah, people were telling me, or they were just saying there was a bunch of threads about Bitcoin at $100, I remember. And I was a little bit too young. I was basically like 14, 15, 16 years old, I believe. I wasn't even 16 years old. So I wish I could go back. I wish I had a time machine to go back and buy some more Bitcoin. I don't know about you. Leave a comment down below. Do you wish you could go back? I bet most of you would. But Jed McCaleb obviously says no because he was here in the early days. So he basically took advantage of it as much as he could. But I would go back, definitely.
Cool to have bought more Bitcoin back then, for sure. Like, I think that's easy for anyone to say. But I mean, I think things are very exciting right now. It's not like I want to go back in time, but yeah, I mean, in hindsight, you can always make better decisions. In particular, something that had such an asymmetry of what had happened and like a weird dynamic like Bitcoin or most cryptocurrencies have. Yeah, obviously, if you could go back and just get more of it, it would be great. But that's true of like almost all things. So.
Well, it's funny to hear your reflections on that time period, and maybe we could stick with that a little more. It's like, what do you wish people would know about what it was like to be in Bitcoin? And because you were there, people might not know that you founded Mt. Gox, like sold it to Mark Harpalus, or for part of a lot of the startups. Like, what do people get wrong now? Now that there's like a romanticized period of like the history, what do they get wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to imagine, even as someone that's been through it. Like even for you and I think it's hard when we like to realize to remember like how like small it was back then and how uncertain it was. Like definitely when I first got involved, like I thought it was an awesome idea, and I was like, man, no, this is never going to work. Like who's going to start using this stuff? But it's cool, so I would just want to start messing with it, right? And I think a lot of people had that view, and so it's just a very different world from there to now, and just the type of characters that were involved, it was just a lot more colorful, and just people that were more on the edges of the internet, I think, right? And so to see it go from that to evolve to this pretty mainstream thing now is like quite interesting, and it's just hard to remember how nascent it was and how weird it was, right? And yeah, so like a lot of the decisions and like things that happened back then, I think I looked at with the lens of from today's view, but like there's no way I should have given Mt. Gox to Mark Harpalus, right? That never would have happened in today's world, right? And obviously it was a huge mistake. Like I think it could have been worth like as much as Coinbase, but instead I just gave it to this dude who was like obviously incompetent, right? And so it's just, but wow. Those mistakes are easy to make at that time because you just don't know. Like it's like there's a few thousand people using this. It's like kind of this crazy thing. You're like, okay, well, whatever.
That's crazy. He gave away Mt. Gox for basically free. Mt. Gox held hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin. And he's going to speak about that story in just a second. But he basically gave it away for free. And that's like $100 billion mistake that he made. So we all make mistakes. Even one of the smartest people in the world, one of the most successful people in cryptocurrency, Jed McCaleb, even he made a bunch of big mistakes. So just keep that in mind. If you're going through a hard time or you made a few mistakes, just keep pushing through it. And that's basically what I got from the story. But listen to this.
See what happens with it, right? So that's kind of the big thing, just the dramatic shift from where it was then to this like dream kind of weird internet thing to the kind of this mainstream thing where there's like billions of dollars moved around the planet with it. It's like pretty crazy. So
how did those first experience with Bitcoin feel? I mean, I remember when I first bought some in 2013, like it felt, like what am I doing? Like I'm wiring money to like a weird Russian payment intermediary and then it's going to BTC. And that was even probably a better experience than you have. Did you mine your first Bitcoin? Did you buy it? Like what were those experiences like?
Well, I mean, that was the big driver for making Mt. Gox in the first place because I wanted to get it. I didn't really want to like set up a whole mining thing. I eventually set up like one machine to do it, but that was pretty small. But like if you wanted to buy like $1,000 or $2,000 worth of it, then you'd have to there was no way to do it, right? And so that was one of the big motivations for setting up Mt. Gox. So my experiences buying it were fairly straightforward because it was because I controlled the exchange, so it's easy. But I could see like somebody looking at the Mt. Gox site or looking at these other sites and be like, what the hell is this? Especially when you got to go live.
You probably had like a level of insight to the market like that is almost kind of insane these days, right? Like because Mt. Gox, like when you were running Mt. Gox, it was the only exchange, and so you had the whole order book view of like the global Bitcoin market.
Yeah, it was weird. I mean, I remember because there was also because when I started there had been people because I came to Bitcoin in 2010, and so it had been around for a year. So there had been people that had been mining for like a year, and a lot of them had like a ton of Bitcoin, and they just kind of were just doing it for fun, and they'd never been able to sell it, and so now there was this thing that could sell it. So I remember this one guy was like putting on I forget the exact quantities, but it was like hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin or something. He was selling for basically nothing, and I was like, dude, just give it a second, just like give it like 6 months or something to see. But he just kept unloading it. I felt so bad for him afterwards because he would have made like billions of dollars, right? So yeah.
Imagine having hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin, and you sold it for basically nothing. That is what, wow. Wow. Back then it was a whole different world, everyone. A lot of people thought that, like for example, if you thought you were back there in that time, you would have held on and you would have never sold. But a lot of people had hundreds of thousands of Bitcoins and they just sold because they didn't think that Bitcoin would be such a big thing like it is today. So even the smartest people in the world, they make mistakes. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, how do you? So maybe a couple questions on that. So I've heard crazy stories as well. There was a guy that reached out a few months ago, and he got his first Bitcoin. He mailed. I always think this is a wild story. He mailed physical cash to someone, and that person sent him 50,000 Bitcoin via a Bitcoin transaction. But that person who sold it, they mined 5,000 Bitcoin, but then they were willing to accept the opportunity that they might get cash in the mail, giving it up. So people just didn't think Bitcoin would be valuable. Can you dive into that?
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to what I was saying before. It's just it was just this weird fringe internet thing, and people were making some people would make these weird online games, and you'd pay with them. And I mean, I went on some poker site. You put Bitcoin on there, and it's just it's worth a few cents. So it's not no one's really taking it that seriously. But then a year later, now it's worth $10,000 or something. It's just a weird step change in legitimacy, I guess, right? And so in the beginning, you're just kind of taking wild bets. It doesn't really matter. You're just doing it's just cool because you're wow, there's this internet token. And when you first started using it, I'm sure you had this experience too. When you actually send Bitcoin to someone for a payment, it's pretty magical because it's just it's not like a credit card or anything where there's all this form you have to do. You just send it and it's done and the payment is made. It's a cool experience, right? And so I think that's one of the reasons why started getting mindshare, of course. So.
Well, I want to get into your thoughts on Saylor and Trump and the strategic Bitcoin reserve and all that the newfangled stuff. But maybe kind of as a sequencing question, Bitcoin today is really thought of as a store of value, and to an extent it has really succeeded at that. You could argue. Do you think that is Bitcoin's place in the world ultimately? Do you use Bitcoin as your store of value? How do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know. It just doesn't really, the Bitcoin network doesn't really support that many transactions per second. So it's hard for it to be anything other than a store of value, right? It can't be this common thing that people are sending money around all the time. But I think it is good in certain situations to I think it was good for getting money out of China for people, things like that. There's things where you want to bypass authoritarianism, and I think it's good for these kind of things. So it's only good for that to the extent that it's popular on all sides, right? And so I don't know. We'll see what happens. You could see a world where something that's a little more functional eventually surpasses it, but it's hard to say. So
maybe let's talk about.
So he thinks that something could surpass Bitcoin. You never know. It could be XRP, it could be XLM. Something could surpass Bitcoin, according to him, which is very interesting.
Michael Saylor for a minute. He's sort of the person who I would say today is like the driving force in the Bitcoin culture. He's sort of driving and setting a lot of the narratives, and he has a very specific way that he thinks about Bitcoin. How much do you align? Do you see value in his perspective? Obviously, he's amassed a huge amount of Bitcoin, through buying in the open market. What are your, as a Bitcoin OG, as an early founder, like what do you think about what he's built?
So by the time he kind of came on the scene, I had already kind of started stepping back from crypto. So I'm actually not that familiar with his whole like worldview or like what his model is. But yeah, so I probably don't have that great of an answer for this. But yeah, I mean, like I try, like, I think crypto is awesome and I think it's super exciting, but it just, at some point it became something that just was too, I just couldn't pay attention to it anymore. There was just too much nonsense and like too much, it became very frustrating. So I kind of had to like step away from it a little bit more. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my, standpoint, like, a big kind of arc in my transition was, I kind of came out of the ICO era being like very dissatisfied and being like, I spent all my day reading all these stupid white papers just to enrich other people. And I was like, this is gross and weird and stupid. But at the same time, like, you can't do anything about it. This is just the nature of the market. I think I turned away from that. And there was a point for me where I was like, okay, I could leave the space, or, I could go back to the beginning and sort of try to figure it out. Because I guess maybe for your, and for the listeners out there, right? It's like, I think I was like learning Bitcoin and crypto stuff kind of when the market was doing it, right? CoinDesk was the authoritative publication, but like I wasn't like I hadn't like taken a class on Bitcoin, like I never like learned it on like a technical level. So there was kind of a moment where I was like, okay, I've seen this industry develop, I know who the players are, I kind of know where it's gone, and I can either kind of go back and like kind of fill in the missing pieces, or that's it. And so for me, I kind of found Bitcoin again. I was like, okay, well, there's this, network, I can hold my value in it, like it's, nobody can take it away from me. It has these properties where, we can maybe, potentially build other systems outside of the existing financial system. So I kind of found it later in my Bitcoin crypto journey. And I think like the people of the 2021, 22 era, had a similar reaction where they saw Bitcoin as almost like different and unique among cryptocurrencies and the solution to a lot of the problems in cryptocurrency. And it sounds like you didn't necessarily see that view.
I mean, that could be true. Yeah, I mean, in some sense, like Bitcoin is more pure, right? Like I think that's been its attraction all along. Like, we don't even know who the founder is, right? So it is sort of like a pure expression of what this stuff is supposed to be. Like it's obviously not a scam. Like there's no one like running a Bitcoin scam in the background, right? Whereas some of these projects that could be the case, right? So yeah, so I think so in that sense, yeah, I think it is interesting in that way, and I think that's definitely led to its longevity. I think, right? Not only just being the first one, right? But yeah, so it is interesting that way. But yeah, so I mean, I'm still excited about it. I still like. I think the fundamental idea is still cool. It's just like I just can't be involved in the world anymore. So.
Well, what do you think about what the administration's done? Obviously, they've kind of framed themselves as pro-Bitcoin, pro-crypto. They've kind of announced a lot of laws and legislation. They've got the strategic Bitcoin reserve, which exists in legal theory. What are your thoughts on this? I'm sure you always expected it on some level or thought that it could occur. How have you seen sort of the U.S. adoption of Bitcoin and crypto?
I mean, yeah, I don't, again, like I haven't followed it that closely what the administration is actually doing. So I just, see random tweets here and there. So I don't know the details. So it's hard to actually know what's happening or what's good and what's bad. But it does, like, I think the softening of, the prior administration's like kind of aggressive stance towards this, like Gensler was clearly like a bad actor, I think. And so, I think that is positive. I think we could still use, and I think this is being worked on, but we could still use a little bit of like clarity about what's a security and what's not, this kind of thing. But, in my view, it would be, like, I still think all these things should be viewed as a currency. I mean, I think we're still in this regime where if you buy a donut with Bitcoin, it's a taxable event, which is like bad, right? So like, it'd be ideal that they were like currencies treated like foreign currencies where, if you use euros to buy something, it's not a taxable event, right? So stuff like that, I think should still happen, but it does seem like we're going in the right direction at least. So.
And so do you like, there's a lot of like angst now, like in the community, maybe you see, maybe you don't, about like the ethos is being lost. And I know it's interesting maybe to ask your perspective. It's like, there's kind of a question now with people like, are we staying true to like the old Bitcoiners, like in what we're currently doing in the Bitcoin space? But it sounds like, what is your reflection on that, I guess? And do you think that, it sounds like you don't think that the industry has really stayed true to its original spirit?
Well, I think it's kind of impossible, right? I mean, there's the real world, right? And it's, as things get more popular in bigger. Like obviously it'll get more diffuse. There's more perspectives, and there's less people that have the kind of this like this cypherpunk libertarian thing going on. And I think that's okay. I think as long as the underlying technology is that, like like for instance, like everyone uses the internet now, and even though the ethos of the internet is very different than it was before, it's still this like awesome tool for freedom and like decentralization. So it's still kind of achieved its purpose, whether the people using it are aware of that or not, right? And I think that's the world we need to get to with this cryptocurrency stuff, is where it's like ubiquitous enough where even though the day-to-day person is not thinking about how this is like a tool of freedom, but it still is, right? So I think that's where we want to go. So.
Well, I want to get to space and everything you're doing now, and I know there's some cool stuff there. But let's stick with the Wall Street thing for a second, because like that, Wall Street is here. They're now adopting Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. In the case of Michael Saylor, it's like they're helping him launch these financial products that go on regulated rails that helped him buy and custody like 800,000 Bitcoin. The banks seem like they want to offer stablecoin products. Like this is like becoming part of the infrastructure. I mean, you talked to these banks like in 2013, right? I remember reading that you talked to Wells Fargo and some of these larger banks, and like it's happening now that they're getting involved.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I think like at Stellar, we just announced this big project with the DTCC, which does all the clearinghouse for all the equities in the United States and stuff like that. And so I think using this stuff as like financial rails is becoming more real. And I think we work with a ton of the banks, and Franklin Templeton has a massive amount of value that's stored on Stellar, things like that. So I think this is definitely becoming. They're realizing that these are actually like good tools, and like just reducing friction and making things more flexible is not only good for all these cypherpunk reasons, but also just good because it just is easier and like cheaper. It makes people's lives better, right? So that's slowly happening. I mean, I think it's just slow to change the way people do stuff with money, right? And maybe rightfully so, but it seems like it's finally catching up with what this stuff is actually capable of. So.
But I guess it does seem like the banks are going to adopt this, and the banks are going to stay, at least for now, maybe unaffected by Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and it might just sort of be absorbed into like the existing financial infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so I mean, banks do serve a purpose, right? I mean, there's a reason why banks exist, and so, I think if you can kind of decouple the purpose from the gatekeeping, I think you're in a good world, right? Like, so like if you're just using it for what they're useful for, but if they're like, gatekeeping or like, denying you stuff, you can just easily move your money to somewhere else and like, just take advantage of like the flexible nature of cryptocurrency. I think you kind of get the best of both things, right? And so it makes sense to me that this would, I mean, part of like the early crypto evolution was like kind of recapitulating the whole like financial industry, right? Like, I mean, like Coinbase is essentially a bank, and like, all these things were just kind of rebuilt again, but just on crypto rails. And that's worked pretty well, right? And so I think it makes sense that the existing traditional rails would see this and be like, okay, we need to adapt to this new technology because it is better, right? So,
and it seems like governments are doing that. I mean, it's particularly with the Trump administration and the emphasis on stable coins, using this as like kind of a tool for like international power expansion. Like this is some really heady stuff that like, kind of gets back to the ethos of the early days. It's like, it's confusing. Like, I don't know, it's confusing to me being at a time where like the US government is sort of like very actively like trying to export its power globally, like using the crypto infrastructure. Maybe somebody that that we both know, Ryan Selkis, formerly of Masari, has kind of tweeted about and kind of left the community and sort of feels like, crypto has sort of been, taken into fintech, like crypto is just fintech now, and sort of this idea that we're going to radically recreate the financial system. This is maybe not going to happen like we thought.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think the story's not over, but yeah, I mean, I think it's, we still have a way to go, right? Like,
yeah, we still have a long way to go, everyone. The crypto story is just getting started. It's only about 10 years old, 15 years old. That's it. So imagine where we can be in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Cryptocurrency can revolutionize the world. So just keep that in mind. We're still very, very early.
Like, it's definitely not there yet, and it's possible that the thing gets kind of co-opted in a bad way, and that you end up inserting these kind of regulatory controls even more deeply than they were before with like dollars. I mean, if you just have cash is like pretty, without constraints. I mean, I think the main way like money moves illicitly around the world is like $100 bills, right? So yeah, I mean, it's hard. I think it's just too early to say.
So this interview of the co-founder of Ripple Xrp and Stellar Lumens Xlm and an early Bitcoin adopter of Jed McCaleb, this guy speaking about Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, the future of crypto, was extremely important. And I stopped about halfway through because they start speaking about space and space technologies, which is very important, yes, but it doesn't really have much to do with cryptocurrency. But anyways, if you want to watch the entire interview, I will leave a link to it down below. Again, shout out to the Bitcoin historian for this amazing interview. But that is why this video is extremely important to everyone, especially if you hold XLM, XRP, Bitcoin, or any cryptocurrency. The fact that Jed McCaleb, one of the pioneers of the crypto space, He spoke about the future of crypto, about institutional adoption, banks adopting cryptocurrency, the US Strategic Reserve, governments, how they could use cryptocurrency, and the future of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency all over the world. This interview, everyone, was extremely important. So destroy the like button, share this video, whatever you need to do. And again, if you want to watch the entire interview, I will leave a link to it down below. But again, not many people have ever seen this interview, and this is really, really important actually. So share this video, tap the like button, whatever you need to do. Join us, subscribe, because my name is Amen, and I'm your crypto AI man, here to help you with everything cryptocurrency, especially Bitcoin, Xrp, Xlm, good cryptocurrencies we speak about. So I love you all, and I will see you very soon. Until next time, crypto AI man out.